take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy?
I'm a human being, god damn it! My life has value! It's time to ask yourself what you believe.
Mass murder, torture, perjury, embezzlement, fraud, deception, treason. These are just a few of your many crimes against humanity. You will not win this war, for you are fighting the very essence of humanity.
Hey, welcome to Truth or Talk. I'm April Bowden.
And I'm Virstyne Henry.
You can check out our website at truthertalk.com, where you can read about us if you haven't heard us before. This is our first time on UCY TV. We're very excited to be a part of this network, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's our first show with UCY TV. We're thrilled. We love all the, I was looking around and we were just talking about they have like I Cure Cancer, which is a really popular show, and now the new Jack Blood show. So we're in good company. We have
Truth on the Tracks with Brandon Turbobill. Sorry, we didn't have time to name all of them, but it's just really cool to be a part of this community. We're really excited because we believe in us sticking together in these crazy times that we're living right now.
Precisely. And if you don't know who we are, you can check out our website, like I said, at truthertalk.com. You can read more about us, listen to our archived shows, because we've been doing this for about a year and a half, but we were an island. We were doing it by ourselves. We didn't have a network until now, so we're excited because we're always about trying to, like, come together with people, and I think this suits us better, is to be a part of a family and stuff, don't you think?
Oh, definitely. Well, just because they're just, like I said, stuff's getting crazy, so we need to stick together. We need to reach out. We can't, there's a lot of fighting within the truth movement. We can't have that. None of that, right?
We can't have any of that.
We saw,
you look on the UCY TV, all the different shows that they have. I mean, there's a lot of different shows on there, and some of them tackle different things. Like there's a show about radiation, and there's one for people to learn about prepping. There's one for that is about chemtrails, which is Dane Wigington's show, who we had on our show previously.
We interviewed him, yeah.
We interviewed him about chemtrails. Yeah, he's a great guy, and so when I saw that, I was like, oh, cool, somebody from our past, one of our past show guests.
Yeah.
Because we have had so many amazing people, and he was one of them for sure. He was a really great interview. Taught us all about chemtrails, which, you think you know it until you talk to someone like Dane, and then you're like, oh, wow, that's a lot of stuff to take in. And
I was thinking, what's interesting, too, I was thinking about the interview we had with Dane, and it's very interesting that this movement attracts people from all walks of life, because he got involved because of his work and how chemtrails were affecting his life personally. But then you have teachers and doctors and lawyers and musicians, and I just see like the general media always try and kind of group us together as if we're nutty for seeking the truth. But people are coming to these truths through different avenues and different occupations, which is very interesting to me. So it's not like we worship anything, or we're sacrificing chickens or anything like they like to make it seem we are. But it's true. I feel like we talk about this quite a bit on the show too, about like when you start to become awake to the truth, you start to you lose friends. You go through a transition. It's been a definite transition for me.
Yeah.
I have gained some friends too. I have met some amazing people because of it, but simply because, I talk about things that they just, I guess it makes them uncomfortable. And I'm not that person at the party that goes and picks fights with people and, try to show everybody what I know and how I don't call people sheeple and all that shit. I'm not done with that. But, like I'll post an anti-vax ad on my wall and people will like flip out, like something as simple as like, Mr. Gates, don't give us food. No, don't give us vaccines. We need food and water, which is common sense, which is what they do.
Right. Exactly.
But they'll be like, oh, no, vaccines save lives,
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and then you bring up the vaccine issue because for both of us, the vaccine issue was a huge part of our awakening and how we came into this movement, whatever you want to call it. And that's because I have a vaccine-damaged son, and that's part of what spurned my interest into researching the vaccine. Well, I shouldn't say part of, that it was my interest into researching it.
I have a cousin that...
Right, you have a cousin, and then, of course, my son, who, we're very close. And so we started researching in this, and once you dive into the rabbit hole, you go, oh, well, their vaccines actually serve no purpose because they're ineffective, and they have all these horrible toxins in them. So the only purpose that they would really have is if you're deliberately trying to hurt someone or kill them, in which case, sadly, we do know people who that's happened, where they've lost, their child or lost a loved one or something because to vaccination. Or, in my case, my son's severely autistic, but there's other people who their children, will go into a state where they may never walk again, or they lose, all motor functions. I mean, we have a really good friend that we have on the show all the time. She's our third member, Sarah Sotomayor, and she was severely damaged by Gardasil, and it affected us very profoundly because she's a lovely person. She's very smart, and she's a very good friend.
Very, yeah.
And we have her on quite frequently on our show, and but it affected us because when she's 13, she was a healthy girl. She was athletic, and she was damaged by Gardasil, and everything that the medical industrial complex did to try and fix her problem, quote, just made it worse. They did all kinds of weird things. Got her hooked on morphine, gave her chemotherapy. They just, everything. And really, all they needed to do was just not give her the stupid Gardasil vaccine in the first place.
Yeah.
She would have been fine.
And that was also scary, too, when we first came across that story because, you think, I guess, maybe people think that they're safe from getting vaccine injured once their child is past a certain age, but, lo and behold. But then look at that grown lady that got the flu shot. Did you ever see that a few years ago?
Yeah.
How the lady, she got the flu shot and it messed her up, and she couldn't walk. She looked like she was, flapping her arms as she was walking down the street. She couldn't walk in a straight line. She was totally messed up. Poor lady. I think she might be okay now or doing a little better. I'm not sure, but really, but anyway.
Yeah, she did recover quite a bit because she went to a doctor who did kind of holistic treatments and used things like hyperbaric chambers and whatnot. So it took many, many years, as it is with our friend Sarah, who's 21 now, and she's still struggling and still trying to restore her health. You guys want to read about her, by the way, and just give you a quick plug because we love her so much. Sarah's healingjourney.wordpress.com. You could read Sarah's story, and yeah, but it's never too late because even people, we see with the elderly, they have an increase of Alzheimer's after they get flu shots, or which contain aluminum, and there's a direct correlation between Alzheimer's disease and aluminum. And all these vaccines contain aluminum, every single one of them, and yet they don't seem to want to connect the two. So, but see how illogical that is. It's like you're injecting someone with aluminum. We know aluminum causes Alzheimer's, but yet vaccines don't cause Alzheimer's. What? But you're putting aluminum in my blood, which makes it harder to eliminate, than if you were to get it through a normal process, like if you were to breathe it in, or if you were, not that that's good, but if you were, it would be easier to eliminate. Whereas when they stick you with it, it's really hard. And so we're seeing this huge increase of the elderly developing Alzheimer's. And the latest is the chickenpox vaccine is now causing shingles. Well, of course.
Well, duh.
Yeah.
That shit. Fuck that.
Right, of course it is. A friend of mine, years ago, this woman who, her son was also autistic, and he went to my son's school, and her son had the chickenpox vaccine. Within days, he developed shingles all over his body, and he was 18 months old or something at the time. So it's quite apparent that that's what's going to happen because the shingles is caused by the chickenpox virus. So, it's like, get a clue. So you wrote a really good essay. You wrote this really amazing article. That's actually how we ended up on this show because Brandon Tuberville found
he found my article, and he connected with me. He friend requested me, and we started talking. And then I found out he had a radio show, and we just kind of, one thing led to another, and anyway, here we are. But
exactly, that's how we ended up here. And it was because of this one essay, but it's been a great thing that you wrote that, because it's touched a lot of people, and a lot of people have said that it's just perfect because it has something for everyone. It helps the layperson understand the issue, but even if you know a little more, you dig a little deeper, you have a lot of citations and references. But you had this guy, you found it really upsetting because he's sitting there giving you a lot of crap about it, but he doesn't even read it.
He doesn't read it. Oh God, yeah, that was just really disturbing, and it just come to this conclusion within the last few months, because I think it was part of me that was like, well, if I have the facts and I have everything organized and I do it in a way where people would understand, and then they'll read it and then they'll get it and they'll understand where I'm coming from, but that's not the case, because there's so many people there's so many people too that are just more interested in being right than they are with knowing the actual truth,
Right.
Like, the article's pretty long. I mean, you can read the article, but all the references and stuff, it would probably take about, maybe a week or two to go through, because their videos and their articles and their documents and their inserts from the vaccine, and vaccine inserts with all the ingredients in the vaccines, and then there's another document in there showing like what the ingredients are in the vaccines and what they how they affect you, and then reports from the CDC themselves using their own information against them. It's just like, It's insane. But, I always get, for the pro-vaccine people, they always have the same kind of sentence. It's almost as if they're reading from a script. They always say something like, oh, well, you're just, spouting the same anti-science rhetoric. They use the words like anti-science. What is what's the word? I can't think of the word. When they're like, oh, that's not scientific evidence. I like to say that shit too. That's not scientific evidence. Anecdotal, and that's anecdotal evidence. And and then my question is about whose standards? How do you determine what is? And then if I give them a list of like. There's a document that this one doctor, Suzanne Humphreys, got together and signed that she's continuing to build on, but at least has about 80 doctors and the scientists and nurses that are coming out and speaking out against the dangers of vaccines. And I give him a list of 80 doctors, and he's like, well, those are quacks. Like he doesn't even,
Right.
So they'll go to Quackwatch, or they'll type in the name and then Quackwatch comes up, but that's another show. But Quackwatch comes up. And then, they're going to believe what Quackwatch says, and that's still listening to the same side of the story. To really get both sides of the story, you're going to have to actually listen to what the person said, Is that, like, it's like high school bullshit, It's like when you're in high school, or you're in school, and somebody spreads a rumor about you, and, people are going to believe that rumor, but they're not going to come to you, the source, and ask you if that rumor is true. They might as well just read the National Enquirer. If they're just going to, seriously, if they're just going to go by Quackwatch or Janie McCarthy's body count, all that stuff. And plus that stuff is really, they just make shit up. Like they're saying that, the number of vaccines that caused autism from children are 0. Really? Vaccines don't hurt anybody. They obviously don't know about the National Childhood Injury Compensation Act. They don't, you know what I mean? Like at least put 1. Like don't put 0.
They're so mean-spirited, and to say that anecdotal information is invalid. How did they think that these pharmaceutical companies take data on efficacy and safety? How do you think
from
they
people?
do that?
I know people's stories and people's experiences.
Exactly.
That's so stupid. I know.
It's anecdotal information. They get information and they take it in, and that's where you're saying, like, you can go to the CDC's website and it gives you this information, and like in the pharmaceutical vaccine inserts. Like when I used to do videos on this, and I would tell people about, say Gardasil, or give an example of the DTaP or something like that, I would just take it from Merck's manual. I just be like, right here in their manual, they're telling you this is what happened to these people in these control groups after they took
but
the vaccine.
April,
these are the side effects.
YouTube videos.
Go ahead.
YouTube videos aren't valid evidence. That's not scientific.
I was the one doing the YouTube video with this,
I know.
but I was reading it from the Merck manual.
I know, but
still,
if you send that video to somebody, they're going to be like, well, this is a YouTube video. That's not scientific evidence. Even though, I bet you how many studies, how many, papers or books did they read to determine that vaccines were safe? None. Really?
Right. Because there are none, so they obviously read none, which is, because they don't, there is nothing. I mean, you can read a book that says that vaccines are safe, but then if you read the citations and the references that they're giving you, they're either biased or invalid. If you actually go through the work and you read it, you find out that the pharmaceutical companies will admit to you time and time again that they're not safe, and they don't even know if they work. They say, we don't know.
Well, there was the last, I think, major measles outbreak that happened. It was somewhere back east, and it was, I think it was like 54 people got measles. Did you know that 53 of those people were already vaccinated? But then, and this is from the CDC's records that I included in the article, 53 of those people were already vaccinated for the measles, and then after that, after they nonchalantly put that in a report, and then after the report, they say, oh, but measles is still the safest and most effective way of preventing, the measles shot is still the safest and most effective way of preventing the measles. I'm like, are we in 1984?
Dude, there was
so double-speak. Sorry, go ahead.
This was in mainstream news the other day. It was like on CBC or something like that, or CBS. This little boy had died on Christmas because after taking the flu shot, the mother, they reported it on the news, and then in the end of saying it, they go, but the flu shot's still your best protection against the flu. I'm like, how dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you sit there and say that when you absolutely know that this little boy died? It's like, that's awful. It's horrible.
I would like to do research maybe in the future about the people that actually die of the flu and the complications and why they die of the flu. Because people do die of the flu, but it's really rare.
Right. It is really rare. And it's if you go to the CDC's website and they show you the listings of how many people die, that's a very, skewed number because they actually include the people who die of pneumonia. So they combine those numbers. But if you list the flu shot, the flu separately, it's far less. And I don't remember how much it is, but it's less than 2,000 a year. And but they'll tell you it's around 10 or 15,000. But it's actually, only because they're adding the numbers of people that die from pneumonia. Now, why did they lump that together? I don't know. Because
they're assholes.
Right, exactly. So we're going to cut to a short break, but when we get back, we're going to be talking to Clint Richardson of realityblogger.wordpress.com, and he also has a website called thecorporationnation.com, and he's a really cool guy. We will be talking to him because he's very... he knows a lot about a lot of different things, so we'll see how much we can get into in the next hour. But we definitely want to get into this thing called the Common Core of education. Yeah. And you're a teacher, and so this is something that's interesting to you, and it's also something that is interesting to me as a parent. And it should be interesting to everybody because it really ties into this globalization, this Agenda 21. So hopefully everybody will stay tuned. We're going to take a short break, and in the interlude, I'm going to play a little clip of a mom who basically breaks down why this whole Common Core thing is a bad idea in 4 minutes, which is pretty awesome. Yeah. So please stay tuned. We will be right back. We'll be talking to our boy Clint Richardson.
All right.
So all that's done. Now, we are down to our public comment time. I would like to recognize Mrs. Karen Lamoureux, who has 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Chairman and the Board. My name is Karen. I'm a mother of 3 in the Pulaski County Special School District. I am here today not speaking just on behalf of myself. I'm here representing 1,110 other parents, educators, and taxpayers in our state who have some very serious reservations about the Common Core initiative. We are not alone in this regard. 6 other states have pulled out of their park agreement. 22 other states currently have legislation pending to either get out of Common Core or to make significant changes to it. After listening to what was said this morning, I have come to the conclusion that this board is clearly as uninformed as the parents are or were when these standards were adopted. We were told the same thing that you were told, and that Common Core is a set of rigorous, college-ready internationally benchmarked standards that prepare our kids to compete in a global economy. This is nothing more than an empty sales pitch for corporations and government agencies to profit from our kids and sell them downriver in the name of saving education. I have a math question for you, board members. Are you ready? Get your pencils out. I'm not kidding. Are you smarter than a Common Core fourth grader? Let's find out. The problem is, Mr. Yamada's class has 18 students. If the class counts around by a number and ends with 90, what number did they count by? I'll restate the problem. Mr. Yamada's class has 18 students. If the class counts around by a number and ends with 90, what number did they count by? Does anyone on the board have an answer? 5. And may I ask, madam, how did you come up with that answer?
Divided 18 into 90.
You know why? Because that's what makes sense, right? That's the way we were taught to do it in the fourth grade level. This, however, is what the Common Core standards expect our fourth graders to do. If they solve it in those 2 steps, they get it marked wrong. They are expected to draw 18 circles with 90 hash marks, solving this problem in exactly 108 steps. Board members, this is not rigorous. This is not college ready. This is not preparing our children to compete in a global economy. Skipping rote memorization of multiplication tables is hindering their ability to master long division and fractions later on in the semester. And now our children who were testing in the 80th or higher percentile in math last year are now coming home with C's, D's, and F's on their report cards. Not because, as Arnie Duncan would put it, that white suburban mothers think their children aren't as brilliant as they thought they were, but because, thank you, I encourage you to listen to us when we send you our emails, despite the comments that were made by our chairperson here today. Our concerns are not based on hysteria or propaganda. They are based on fact, and we are prepared to present those facts. Can you see the trembling in my voice? Parents have not had a voice here, and you need to listen to our concerns. We are moving forward with our legislature to make some very serious changes to this, and all I ask is that you bend your ear and take us seriously. We are college-educated parents. I come to you with 12 years of college education and a former member of the National Honor Society when I tell you this is not working, and it's not what they told you it would be. We will save the privacy concerns and the testing concerns for our legislature. But when it comes to standards, that's your ball court, and we need you to help us with this because this program is dumbing our children down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everything I'm looking at seems crazy. The newspaper, the television, nothing's right. Nothing's telling me what's true. It's like I fell into a bucket of cream and kicked my legs until I became a mouse. What's that about? I'm a conspiracy realist, not a conspiracy theorist. I want a t-shirt that represents me. What? There's one that's available? Go to shop.truthertease.com, says the voice in my head. Shop.truthertease.com. It's not crazy. I'm not afraid to go on the internet and go to shop.truthertease.com. I'm not scared. I've taken out bowling balls that look like you. That's what I said. Straighten out. Get your conspiracy realist t-shirt. Don't make me come over there. You look good. You look good.
Hi, thanks for listening to Truth or Talk. Today we're going to be talking to Clint Richardson. Clint is a writer, independent researcher, radio talk show host, documentary, filmmaker, and public speaker. He's done extensive research into this thing that everyone's talking about, the Common Core of education, and he has a new movie about it, which can be found at his blog, along with his other works, essays, show links, and more. You can find it at corporationnation.com, and his other works and essays at realityblogger.wordpress.com. Please welcome to the show, Clint Richardson. Hey, Clint.
Hi, Clint.
Hi, how you guys doing?
Great. How about you?
Very good, very good.
All right. Well, so good to have you on our show today. And I wanted to just start off by asking or explaining to our audience, in case they're not familiar with you and your work, who you are and how you started the reality blog.
Well, I was working in Hollywood as a sound professional, sound designer for the top company out there, and the work just started getting a little too, I don't know, realistic were putting sounds to demons and that kind of stuff, and it started getting to me. Started having a crisis of conscience, and so I quit my job. Some days to my chagrin because I was making a lot of money. But for the most part, I'm happy being a full-time activist and poor. So first thing I did, because I'd heard this guy named Walter Burien on the radio before, as I contacted him, he needed help in producing a film, and so we produced The Only Game in Town, which is basically about comprehensive annual financial reports and his efforts to basically bring all the public funds back into the realm where the public is the beneficiary instead of basically the organized crime that is government, where right now all those investments are basically going overseas and not helping the people of America at all. Just like the the oil reserves that are being pumped out of northern America and shipped to China, basically losing our wealth by these actions of this organized criminal syndicate. And so after that, I started making my own films since I had the sound skills anyway. I kind of learned video along the way, and made The Corporation Nation, which is at thecorporationnation.com, and a bunch of films, made a vaccine film, and somehow got into radio, and just through word of mouth, I've gotten to whatever position I'm in right now, which it's been good. None of my stuff is for sale, and none of it is, there's no charge. It can be copied, reproduced freely because the information is just really important.
Yeah. I actually read your essay that you wrote about Hollywood, and I was very, very moved. And first of all, I was in Hollywood for a while pursuing acting. I'm not doing that anymore, but
wait. Which restaurant?
Did I work at?
Yeah.
Oh my God, Sky Bar, Federal Bar, the Yard House.
So you know about that inside, right?
Yeah, I mean it's just inside of what, Hollywood or Sky Bar or what?
When someone says they're an actor, you always ask which.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Quite a few. I have quite a lot of serving and cocktailing experience, but I actually was theater trained too, so I respect acting as an art form, and it's very sad that it's been corrupted and perverted. It's supposed to be an art form that's dedicated to trying to become closer to humanity and understanding people, but it's been perverted, to this whole thing of celebrity now, where it's all about ego and it's very selfish.
You belong in New York City, is where you belong. That's
Yeah, actually, but it's too cold, so I'm here.
Yeah.
But I screen right now and I do music, so those, I'm still an artist, but I'm not, I also, just being, not to be all angry about it or anything, but just being a black woman, there weren't a lot of rules, I would do all the studying and, I had all this training and I respected the art form, but I would audition for whores a lot, and it wasn't really, fun for me, so, I also, just as an artist, I just got tired of going to somebody and basically begging them to let me do my art form. So the thing I found enriching about music and writing is I can do it any time, and I don't, acting, you need somebody to act with, really, unless you want to talk to a mirror. But
sure. Keep in mind that Hollywood is set up by a very powerful cabal that wishes to reinforce the stereotypes it's already produced. So, I mean, you were just the perfect example of someone that's being used for your race and your color and not for your talent. I mean, it's just how it is. And that's one of the reasons I left. I mean, that's one of the many reasons I left. It's a disgusting place. It really is.
Well, I read your article, and not only as an artist that was pursuing acting in Hollywood, but as a teacher. I was really moved. I'm a teacher, now part-time too. And I see how addicted these kids are to these video games, and they're always talking about killing people. That's a source of humor for them, killing people, and I teach a writing class, so one of the classes I teach is a writing class, and I'm always getting essays. I actually had a talk with them a couple of weeks ago that I'm failing anybody who turns in any more essays about killing people. it was just too much, Sam was walking down the street and he chopped off this guy's head and blood came out and ha ha ha, so funny. But all the essays, just about all my essays were somebody getting stabbed or killed or shot or blown up or trying to kill somebody else. It's become so morbid and disturbing. And then when the bell rings, they all run to their iPads or their iPhones and play a game, killing people, shooting people. So when and it just disturbs me. And I try and talk to them about it my own way, but of course they think I'm an old fogey and I'm old-fashioned. I'm trying to ruin their fun, but I'm hoping, maybe when they get older, some of my words will reach them.
It boils down to empathy, and what this is all designed to do is kill that very, very important part of humanity, which is empathy. And I started seeing that not only in myself, because just blood and guts all the time, but I started seeing it around me as well, like you're saying, and it just started disturbing me. And so, now I don't even carry a cell phone anymore. I'm pretty much becoming anti-technology, even though we're sitting here on the World Wide Web and doing what we're doing, which I find to be sort of the law of necessity. There's certain things you can put up with, but for the most part, all of this technology just needs to go. It's killing. Well, we won't get into the vibrational frequencies that are, killing us basically.
Yeah.
But,
it's going back to what we were talking about. You being a sound designer, I thought that was very, very interesting, and I know that it's such a it requires a lot of time and patience and detail. To be able to complete any project that you work on. So, I was wondering how long were you a sound designer? It's a lot of work. I actually watched your reel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it freaked me out. It was good. It was really good, but the noises and stuff were so realistic. It was just
that's why it's a talent, and it's a talent that when I was trying to learn it, the only reason I got hired is because they said I had the talent, and I didn't know what that meant. What it really is an unharnessed thing. There's no way you can tell people how to do it. You just kind of have to be there in the moment and feel it. It's a like I said, it's kind of almost like an empathetic thing.
Yeah.
And so there was no guide to learning how. You sit there and you do it over and over, and you listen to the same thing over and over. That's why I would never want to watch some of the movies I did, because I had to spend 2 weeks putting fire in a movie, and just fire. Just torches and stuff like that.
But you have to pick the perfect sounds, and you have to match them up perfectly, and you have to pick the right type of sound for the right creature and how it moves and stuff. I know it's very detailed. So
and you'd go into the we had a place to record all the people, the stars, and everything, and you'd go in there and you'd actually get up there in front of the mic, and first you're embarrassed because it just looks, I'm sure it looks ridiculous, but you can do it alone. You can just press record and just spend all day in the mic booth and just go, and then you take your own voice and you try to match it with, say, a lion or a tiger or a big gorilla roar, and see that this is the other aspect that I want to get across. This is how sick the whole thing is, and maybe this will help understand. See, the way that we would record, we'd also go out in the field with recording devices and of course record sounds, for our library. Well, the best way to get a really horrific sound from an animal is to harm the animal. So when you hear these high-pitched screams from, say, the Alien movies and stuff like that, those are coming from pigs that are being castrated. So I don't know how to explain this to people and make it, not sound woo-woo or something, but you're literally hearing
Don't make it.
You're hearing something. Yeah, you're hearing something in pain. Literally, it's real pain, and that's what you're getting fed through what I did, which was, the sound design. That's what you're hearing. That's what your kids are hearing, and I don't know how to put that into words, how real that is, and how that actually is affecting people. But it did begin to affect me.
Did you know that going in, that that's how they got these sounds, or as you were working?
No, I had no idea. It was...
It was just research you found out yourself, or you had to
Well, the place I worked was called Sound Deluxe, and it's this huge monster company. Got bought out by Discovery after I left, actually, and they already have this massive library left over from, oh gosh, they've been doing movies since the 50s, I think, 40s, 60s, or 50s. So, I mean, it's a massive sound library. And, one day I was like, how are they getting these horrible sounds? And they explained it to me. And we would go out in the field and do it too. I never would go to the stockyards, but they'd still go out there.
Oh my God! Wow. So I was just, you were talking about how it came back to you, because when I was watching your reel, I noticed that was, there's sounds of like killing and beating people and heart-wrenching screaming and bones breaking and all this stuff.
Yep.
And do you think after work, you said it began to affect you. You think you took the essence of what you were working on home, and how did it affect you? Did you have dreams?
Yeah. Well, and I actually went around to my fellow sound designers, and they were older and more experienced, and I started asking them. And for the most part, what I saw is a bunch of people that had families and mortgages, and I was, I'd never wanted to get a mortgage. I wanted to be able to free to move around and stuff. And so I was asking these people, and they're like, yeah, it's horrible. It's against my Christian, faith. It's everything. And I saw how disturbed they actually were. They never led on to it, because for the most part, we always have clients in the building, and we have to wine and dine them. But, for the most part, they all agreed, and they agreed that it was getting much, much worse just in the 6-7 years that I was there. It got much, much worse, because the graphics were getting so much better. So, it definitely, it's 10 to 14 hour day work days, so it's all you're doing is just, over and over seeing stuff. So it definitely gets to you.
That's very interesting, because even I taught long-term. I was a long-term sub for kindergarten for a while, and we would have these horrible, I love you songs, like these kindergarten songs, that I would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, because those things were in my head. So, like the ABC songs, it was just crazy. And I literally would be haunted, because I'd have to play them every day, and you're a kid sing with the kids, and so that I can just imagine, working 14 hours a day, making sounds of getting pigs castrated, turning them into demons. How that has to have some effect on your psyche. But since you were so good at what you did, have you thought of ways that you could use it benevolently? Your skill for sounds.
Well, that's technically what I thought I was doing when I quit my job, and I was on my way to starting to supervise games and movies and stuff, and I got to work on the last Star Trek movie, even though, when you start out in sound, you don't get credit for things. If you do get credit, you have to join a union or not join a union, and if you join the union, you can't work on the video games, and if you're, it's kind of a nasty thing, but yeah, I quit, and immediately the first thing I did was work Walter, and I did his sound on his movie, hooked him up on a mic, put him in front of a green screen, and he paid for it, but I did it for free. And everything I've done since has been, I've pretty much quit working and struggle every day just to do what I'm doing. So, that's when I make a movie or when I do anything. That's, I found that I had a talent for writing, so I started writing a lot, and then got into the radio. So, and all of it's, I don't get paid for the radio either, even though there's commercials playing and there's, it's a kind of a thankless and, it's not thankless, but there is no money in a lot of the radio spots out there. There's the few exceptions. People don't know, people like Alex Jones, the big shock jocks out there, they pay tens of thousands of dollars to the station to be on the station, and then they have to sell, which is why you hear all these commercials and why they're, $50,000 to be on a station. You're going to have to sell at least $50,000 to break even.
Yeah.
So I'm very pleased that I don't have to pay to be on there, which is actually kind of an honor. Two, I don't have to sell anything. I am, the reason I guess I'm so happy doing it is because I'm uncensored. I have no sponsors, nothing I can't talk about. And that's a good feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Same here. We wish we were making money, but because we like doing it, and it would be great to kind of have a source of income to help you get through your life. But it's really
you have to decide what success is, and I figured out real quick because I was in the heart of the beast. I figured out real quick that success has nothing to do with the beast. I can put a movie out there, I can send it to a few people, and it can go either viral or it can do nothing. Success is purely what, I guess I figured out that you're never going to change the minds of the masses. You're only going to change individual minds. And so I focus more on the individual. I focus on trying to wake up the individual from the group as opposed to trying to say, as a group, do this. No, as an individual, that's where your power is. As a citizen, you have no power. And that's the horrible realization I've come to.
Yeah. Well, going back to the video games that we were talking about, do you think, or do you know, that there are certain games that are designed specifically, is this on purpose to desensitize children?
Well, yeah, and not only that, but, I used to talk to some of the writers, the script writers, for some of the games, and even, you see it in movies, obviously. And they would not be very happy because they would have to include some line about, thank goodness Homeland Security was there to save the day. That kind of thing. So it's very, there's very much, an infiltration with the powers that be, the military industrial complex, if you will. So yeah, you have to put up with that. And you see it in the themes and you especially see it in the scripts. But yeah, it's definitely, again, it's hard to, like with the pig thing, excuse me, it's hard to put it into words what they're doing because it's a psychological operation that's not meant to be understood, and and you, like you said, you see it happening to your kids. You can feel it, it's just not something you can point to and say, that's it. It's actually all around, and it's becoming more and more prevalent. And my concern is that, this Common Core thing that came around is really designed, mostly it's designed to get every child on a computer. Of course, that's for profit for Microsoft and Apple and Dell Computers, which are all partners in this thing. But more importantly, it's to get kids away from nature and to learn about nature on a computer. It's a desensitizing tool in and of itself. And pretty soon, kids are going to want ports. In other words, they're going to want to be able to plug into a computer. This is the road to transhumanism, basically. Slow.
Like the Google Glass thing. My little brother showed me that, and I thought, wow, that's really close to a microchip in your head. It's a computer that we wear in your glasses. I would find that really distracting.
Incremental steps. It's always, everything that's always been done has always been in incremental steps. The reason that, communism and these types of things aren't successful, is because they're instant. They're overnight. Someone takes over and it doesn't last for long. But in America, and the way that the United Nations has been set up, it's been an incremental takeover. You don't notice the grass is growing over your head. It's incrementalism. It's the most important part about these guys' plan, is the incremental takeover of everything, so that you, like I said, you don't notice that all of a sudden kids are wearing, like you said, glasses that might eventually they'll put a chip in, and the technology's already there. It's just a matter of introducing it in a way incrementally that is acceptable, because 10 years ago cloning would be if you heard someone was cloning out there, it would be unacceptable. Today, cloning is everywhere. It's a household name. They're doing horrible things with genetics. They can create disease out of thin air like they can create money. It's a horrible thing that's happening, and no one's doing anything about it because it's incremental. By the time you realize it's happened, it's already accepted in society. See?
Are you familiar with the book called Last Child in the Woods? Have you heard of this?
I don't think so.
Well, I've been reading this book, and what you're talking about with the Common Core and taking children out of nature sort of reminds me of what this guy is talking about in this book, because what he's describing is what he considers an actual disease, almost. And, it's not a technical diagnosis, but he calls it nature deficit disorder, where kids are actually having ill health effects. Yeah. It's affecting, not just desensitizing them, but it's like just affecting their health, and putting them in nature, just taking them on a camping trip, taking them out in the woods, they will immediately start to feel better in their bodies, in their spirit. You some of these things that you lose kind of start to come back. And in the beginning, you just brush past it. You're talking about EMF exposure.
Yeah.
And I know that that's a big problem too. And what you're saying, how this ties into the Common Core issue, is how there's this push, and that's one of the things that struck me, because I have an autistic child, and when I watched your video on that where you guys were talking about the Common Core and how they're pushing towards autistics, especially, and children with special needs, using these devices and things like that for communication, and how it's going to basically replace any other types of form of communication. But then where that leaves you is a society that's all verbal, and it has no other nonverbal communication, which are things that you learn being in nature. So it all kind of ties in together, and you lose those other types of the bigger picture of, because verbal communication is really just 20% of our entire breadth of communication.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about that, it affected me, because I've seen it firsthand, just having dealt with my son, and having dealt with the education system as far as how that goes and how they do push towards that. It's very obvious they're pushing towards that, and I don't think the teachers are necessarily aware of it. They think that it's a good thing that kids are now having these devices that they can communicate with, but it takes away so much, because they're just focused in on these things. And some kids can get very perseverative and very into it, especially when they're autistic. But it's almost like they're teaching. The way I'm looking at it is it's almost all kids are being taught to be sort of autistic, sort of in their own world, even when they're not disabled. And so, would you say that, tying this into Agenda 21 and Common Core, and how you said that, these two things are connected, and would you say that part of it is also maybe the eugenics program, getting everybody in these EMFs that are just causing so much health problems?
Yeah, it's, unfortunately, I think most people by this point that are at all into the alternative media, whatever that means anymore, is, you kind of realize that the medical industry, the pharmaceutical industry, is not there to cure disease.
Right.
It's there to promote disease, in fact, by curing certain symptoms, which causes further symptoms that need to be treated with further drugs, it keeps going on and on and on. So, yeah, the concept of, there's certain documents out there that are very frightening. One of them is a government thing it was actually a university study on transhumanism. And one of the things it says, interestingly, is that the transhumanism is the only way that people could survive through high levels of radiation. And you look at what's going on right now with all these things. Yeah, so it's very concerning. And you look at the models, which are Brave New World by Huxley, and the 1984 model, and so many others, and you read the quotes out of there, and you see those quotes coming true right before your eyes. The autistic thing, I know I put those quotes in one of my blog articles. I don't think I talked about it too much in the video, but you've got one of the top people in London coming out and saying that the autistic children are the workforce of the future. I mean, they're not secret about it. They're trying to, in my opinion, after doing all the vaccine research and making the lethal injection movie,
they're trying to create autistic.
They're trying to perfect. Yeah. Exactly. The Delta.
Are you familiar with Christina England?
Yeah. We did a seminar together with Rima LeBeau actually on this subject.
She's awesome. Actually. Yeah. Okay. So know. So yeah, I was going to say, if you're not familiar with Christina England, she says exactly what you're saying, but so.
Yeah, it's scary. And it's definitely a purposeful push to do this, and it's sick. It really is. It's they say what's my favorite quote? It's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Good quote.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just going back into I guess Common Core, right? You're really big on that. So what are your thoughts on Common Core and how it's affecting or could affect the society?
Well, the most important part about Common Core, people just equate it to education, and yeah, it has to do with education. But as far as the standards, they're very simple. I mean, it's not that big of a thing until you look at the grand scheme, the grand picture, which is what I did. And probably most importantly is to understand why Common Core, Agenda 21, all the sustainable stuff, all this is happening on the local level. And that's because, in other words, state, county, and city and district. And that's because the federal level, it can't happen. They have to infiltrate on the local level, which is why people need to become more aware. The federal government has the power to enter into treaties, but the treaty itself cannot fundamentally alter the nature of government, of the federal government. So all of this Agenda 21 stuff, of course it transfers sovereignty, it transfers all of this, powers, so it can't happen in the federal government. If it could, they would just pass a law and it would be done. So this is why there's been such a push to get it done on the state and local level. So you're basically, they that's where the battle is. And if it gets ratified in all 50 states, then at that point, the federal government can say, well, the 50 states have now accepted Common Core standards. There's no reason we wouldn't be fundamentally changing government. I should say 55 states because that includes all the insular possessions, Puerto Rico and Guam and all that. But if you can change things if all 50 states agree to it and concur that Common Core is the standard. Now, the problem you have is that we still believe that we have some semblance of a normal government, but really what's happening, like I said, the way that Common Core was created was by the 50 governors of each state. They get into a private association called the National Governors Association, and if you look at Common Core, their website, you'll see that the Common Core standards are owned by the National Governors Association. What is the National Governors Association? The 50 governors and their staff. It's like a lobbying group. So literally it lobbies itself. So if you can imagine the governor taking something that his association owns back to his state, and they all meet in Washington D.C. by the way, and we pay for that. They conspire, they create Common Core, and then they go back to their 50 states and run it through legislature. And the legislature is basically a rubber stamp machine at this point. So that's how it works on the national level. And then when you look at it on the international level, where you're getting Agenda 21 into all these countries, it's the same exact model. All the countries or the nations meet, they conspire, they create model legislation, which is uniform law, that type of thing, so that all nations basically pass the same individual laws. And then they go back to their nations. And remember, the United States is a state of the United Nations. It's a member. It's just like California is a member of the United States. The United States is a member of the United Nations. So that's the new central government. I mean, we're in globalization already. So they all scurry back, all these insiders, they scurry back as the leaders of their nation. They introduce the legislation into their legislature, and it's rubber stamped. Now, every nation has the same laws, just like every state has uniform laws called Common Core and all these other different things. You see, it is a conspiracy so vast that people don't recognize it. You can't understand, they can't understand that every single aspect of government has a private association that they meet. They wine and dine with corporations and such, and they get kickbacks, and then they go past the uniform laws. There's over 117 uniform laws, including Uniform Commercial Code and all that stuff. So we're slowly, incrementally, again, we're being forced into a system that otherwise would not be able to exist. Why? Because it would fundamentally alter the nature of the United States. It would give away its power, its sovereignty to the international law and government. So that's basically the story of Common Core. It's much larger than just some standards that are going to make children dumber or uniformly unsmart. Wherever you go in the world now, because the military is also on Common Core, your child will be taught the same thing everywhere in the world. Everywhere in the world, they're going to be getting the same education. Some people might think, wow, that sounds great. But no, it's...
Yeah. Well, because people don't want to use their brain. They want to go to Wikipedia and think they can find all the answers there. But they don't know that, Wikipedia, is very biased and, puts whatever they want, and they don't take any other people's consideration. And I just came to that realization a few months ago when I was doing research for an article I was writing, and I realized that Wikipedia is a fucking liar.
I like to use,
but my kids use that all the time. They're like, when they write papers and stuff, I got this from Wikipedia. And now I try and tell them to get at least 2 or 3 other sources besides Wikipedia.
I would tell them not to use it at all, just to learn how to actually research. But I do use Wikipedia for the sources, because sometimes there's some great, just the cut and dry stuff about government. There's some really great sources all the way at the bottom, and you can actually learn by just reading the titles of the sources sometimes. Especially with medical stuff. Medical stuff, you look at the titles of patents and others' tests and studies they've done, and you get a whole new view of what's actually happening.
I have a question. So for people like us who are conscious about how the world works, it's easy to grasp how Common Core could be used to indoctrinate children. So how do you explain to lay people like how Common Core, who see Common Core as a good thing, why it's not such a good idea? Because you just said you see. Or do you bother?
I try. I do try, and that's what my last little, we recorded a lecture I did to basically some, it was, I wouldn't call them common people. They were in an activist group, but had no idea. I mean, there's literally, people still literally believe that the United States is the same United States as 1776, and it doesn't exist. I mean, it's been incorporated. It's been everything about the United States that gets taught to us is completely opposite of what it actually is. That's one of the hard things. The etymology of the legal language, you learn that every single word that's used in government or in law, in the law society, legal, is completely opposite of the words that we use in conversational language, which is why when they talk, we think, they mean one thing when they mean something completely opposite. It's the web of words that really ensnares us and makes us kind of slaves to the government, because we don't understand what our nature is or our disposition is to government. So that's the first step. How do you convince a bunch of people who literally religiously worship the Constitution and religiously worship what they believe is America, when in truth it's quite the opposite of that? That's the first part that's so difficult. Then you can say, look, your governors literally got together in the most obvious of conspiracies, that 2 or more people working together to harm others. That's all a conspiracy is.
Yeah, most people don't even seem to know the definition of conspiracy. They just use it as a slur. They don't really know what they're saying too. When they call you a conspiracy theorist, Well,
and that's ironic because and this is how they do it. This is what I mean by the way they twist words, because the word conspiracy I do a lot of legal research. Word conspiracy and the word theory are two of the most important concepts in law because, a judge will not accept a case. If you're trying to sue somebody or accuse somebody of a crime, a judge will not accept the case without what's called, in the legal dictionary, a theory of case. Theory of case. It's literally all your evidence, your disclosure, basically. All of the things that you're accusing. If there's not a good theory, the judge doesn't even take the case. So to put, and conspiracy, of course, is just a plan between two or more people. That's everything. Your house was a conspiracy. Your birth was a conspiracy between your mother and father, planned or unplanned. Everything is a conspiracy. So that it's a ridiculous concept. When you put those two words together and you demonize it, well, guess what? What does that create? It creates a sense in people that they are now afraid to introduce their theory of conspiracy into court, the thing they're actually supposed to do. You see how that works? That's psychological warfare.
Doublespeak and
right.
all that stuff, yeah. Very, very interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
So, April, you want to, let me see.
Yeah, no, you mentioned in your movie that Agenda 21 is already set up, but they're giving these meetings about it to the public that really won't matter. So first of all, why would they bother? And then second of all, you say they use a technique called the Delphi technique. So can you explain what that is?
Oh, yeah, I have. The Delphi technique is, well, first of all, you got to understand the concept of consent. Basically, everything is done. You've heard the concept of consent of the governed, basically.
Yes.
Well, see, what we've done, again, it's very important to understand the structure of government. How they garner the common man's consent. Man equals male and female, by the way, kind of like a male and female horse. Don't be offended. When we say mankind, the way they get all citizens' consent is through what's called representatives. Now, long ago, you had delegates. Delegates would go, they'd create law, and then they'd bring the law back to all the people, and the people would vote. Now we have representatives. What do? They're like attorneys. We've actually attorned. To torn is to give over your authority or your power, your consent. So we've attorned our power over to what we call representatives. The representatives then go make law. They get wined and dined with groups like the American Legislative Exchange Council, a bunch of corporations, the Koch brothers and all that. They take what's created by corporations and then they rubber stamp it without the approval of the people. So they're representatives of or attorneys of the people. We don't even realize that we've given up our power, that we have no voice. So that applies to the Delphi technique and to the consent aspect of this. Why do they have public meetings? Why do they have the PTA? Well, the PTA is a very, very much a supporter of Common Core. It's a brainwashing structure for parents, and it gets parents to consent to Common Core. There's two different forms of consent. There's the written kind, which is what the only kind there should be, and then there's tacit consent, which, as we joked earlier, silence is consent. So everything that's happening that you're legally silent about. Doesn't matter if you go hold up a sign. Doesn't matter if you scream from the top of your lungs. No. Legal consent is when government puts something in the paper that says it's going to do this. For instance, chemtrails, geoengineering, altering the weather, which it actually puts in the back of your local newspaper in the public notice section, and then no one sends a letter demanding that they don't do it. In other words, everybody consents through silence. Even if you're screaming, that's not non-consent. Non-consent has to be in the form of a written demand or action in court. So that's what they're doing, is they're basically giving the false impression that parents can go to the meeting and voice their concern. Okay, now we have a debate. Now we have all parties, all concerned parties, have been heard. But what people don't know is that their voice doesn't count. Their voice is just there to get consent. In other words, to make it appear like everybody was heard and the final decision was made. according to both sides of the argument, if you will, the right and the left and all the paradigms that we fall under. And so the Delphi technique is designed, like I said, if I were to try to get up and talk for the three or so hours that I talked, 4 hours actually, that I talked during that lecture, if I were to try to get up and do that, I would be limited, like you are in a city council. You'll be limited to either 10 or 3 minutes. Okay, that's part of the Delphi technique, because there's no way you can get your point out and show evidence and do everything you need to do in 3 minutes when you go to, say, a city council meeting or a PTA meeting or whatever. They limit the time that you can talk. The other aspect of the Delphi technique is something called consensus. Have you heard the consensus that global warming is caused by man?
Oh,
right. Right.
Oh, that's terrible. Yeah, that's horrible.
Consensus of a few scientists that are paid to give their opinion that meanwhile, tens of thousands of scientists from all over the world are signing declarations and things that say this is all crap. It's a lie to get carbon credits and everything else. So, but see, the only thing that matters is the consensus of the professionals, of the credentials. We call it credentialism. It's all part of actually communitarianism. I highly recommend, if you can get a hold of her, a woman named Nikki Rapana. She talks about something that I've just recently learned about, which is called communitarianism, which is basically all of the isms, fascism, corporatism, credentialism, communism, all rolled up into one. And that's, politicians are starting to come out and actually admit that they're part of the communitarian movement, something you really need to learn. I won't get into it now, but sustainable communities, you've heard things like that. It's all part of Agenda 21, basically. So the Delphi technique is basically designed to give the illusion that there is an opposition. That's basically all it is. It'll limit you to your time you can talk, and it stops you all kinds of different techniques. Now you can fight it. For instance, if you have a 30-minute speech that you want to give to your city council and it only limits you to 3 minutes a person, you can write the 30-minute speech out and have 10 different people read the speech, because they actually have to allow each person to talk. So that's one way of fighting it, and they teach that in school, actually, believe it or not. So it's a way to garner the consensus of the minority instead of the majority, basically. They say, well, you're not a professional, so you're not credentialed, or you're not this, and here we have our panel of experts that are paid off, of course. That's basically the Delphi technique.
Interesting. And you mentioned the chemtrails, they give public notice. I didn't know that they did that. They put public notices in the paper. But recently I got in the mail a notice that they're going to be fracking somewhere near here, and I'm like, I don't consent to that. I don't like that. But then, I mean, they just send it to you. They just send you the information like it's just a done deal, and that's how it's going to go down.
Yeah, well, so, you can actually, I mean, if you've got the, pardon the expression, if you've got the balls to stand up to it, you can write a letter saying that you don't consent, that you write all the laws out, and if you can get more and more people to do that, because see that at that point, then my theory anyway is that now you put it on the public record in the correct court with in the registrar or the county clerk, and now you've got an actual a person who stood up and said, I don't consent. Now they're actually acting against the law because they don't have the consent of the general public. See, that's my theory on how we could actually fight it. I wrote a whole thing about that on the geoengineering thing. It's just getting people to actually do it because, again, people are still in the romantic, even though complete tyranny, drones, all this stuff, there's biological weapons, all these things are being put on them. They still believe that somehow they have a voice. And it's really, I use the example of the presidency. We vote for president.
Right.
Yeah.
Voters don't elect. Voters lend credibility to electors. The Electoral College votes. We are a nation that does not elect its president. And we don't even know that. right? I mean, that's
because you get people saying, "Oh, well, if you don't vote, then you don't get to complain." You know, that's like my favorite. They're so stupid. You know,
voting. See, the problem is voting for. If you're voting, Lysander Spooner's, the Constitution of No Authority is a wonderful, wonderful thing. If you don't want to read it, the basic tenet is: look, if you're voting for the opponent of someone that you don't want in office, that is not consent to that person going into office when they win. In other words, if the person you voted for doesn't go into office, the person you didn't vote for, that's supposed to somehow give your consent that person should go to office. That's a ridiculous concept when you think about it, right? I mean, if you're voting your conscience to get rid of somebody, what you've done is actually legitimize the system that puts that person in place. And it is a horrible – democracy is designed that way. And again, we're supposed to be a republic, but instead we're a democracy. Totally different things. Democracy allows – and that's why they spread democracy all over the world, because it allows this system to take place where the powers that be and the bloodlines stay in power, Right. And it's democracy is the worst thing because it's majority rule. And if you control the minds of the majority through Common Core and other things, how can you possibly escape the powers that be?
And you also you mentioned on your website, The Corporation Nation, about how the government itself is a corporation, but most people have no idea that that's the case. And I think you're kind of touching on that just a minute ago. You also mentioned, I think it was in one of your videos that I watched, something about how most people look for consent. They look for accommodations from the government rather than just acting as a free man. So can you talk on those subjects a little bit?
Well, the origins of the word citizenship actually goes, citizen is actually a different way of saying the word denizen. Denizen is actually the enfranchising of something into a corporation. So in order to do that, you have to have basically an artificial person, what we call the straw man. And actually, that's the first thing I'm writing a book called Straw Man, actually right now. My first attempt at a book that's going to go through all of this. But, basically, like we said before, if you're a citizen, then your voice, you're not the people, because the only people are the representatives. Your voice, your individual voice that's so important to you, goes to your representative. Now you have a group of citizens instead of having an individual voice. And that's what the whole system is designed to do, is take all the power away from the individual. In other words, take the republic and destroy it, because in a republic there is no majority rule. The minority of one is always represented. If we had an actual republic, like people believe we do,
right,
we would there would be no legislation, because you'd have to get everybody in the whole state to approve the legislation, every single last person. It's impossible. I mean, it would be impossible. And so basically, you have two sets of rights. Okay, one is your natural rights under God. Okay, those come from basically all law is ecclesiastical. It comes from the scriptures, and it comes from the teachings of Christ are actually, surprisingly, the natural law. He's teaching you how to live without church and without government. He's sort of an anarchist, if you will, and definitely not a pacifist. He teaches the slaves to allow your master to hit you in a certain way so that you can defend yourself. I mean, it's very interesting when you actually discover the true nature of the Bible and the fact that it's really not a religious book at all. It's actually well, the reason they have you put your hand on the Bible, for instance, is because they're presenting or they're giving you a testament or evidence of the law, and you're actually swearing to abide by the law. The Bible is the law. I mean, people actually submit the Bible into court, and the court accepts it. People, again, when it comes to religion, people want to turn the other way, and yet the entire system of law is based on Scripture, and that's one of the hardest lessons I had to learn to start actually understanding where all this stuff comes from, and that these people actually believe that they rule us with a higher power. They're literally the replacement or vicar of Christ on earth. That is so important for people to learn. Forget the woo-woo and all the crazy language that fundamentalists use. Look at the Bible as the source of law. Literally, the word testament means evidence. I mean, we were just talking about this on my show. The word sin means to go against government. The word hell is actually, in the legal term, was actually a place where they used to put debtors when they didn't pay their debts, down in the basement or the dungeons of the executure. Right? I mean, everything we've been taught, again, in church, the corporate church, is completely adverse to the actual teachings of natural law in the Bible. So it's a choice. You've heard that it's a choice. It's a choice between natural law, and then your other set of rights come from man or government. Now, unfortunately, and these are called negative and positive, or law, basically. So positive and negative, if you think of magnets, a positive and a negative magnet don't want to go together. It's because they're absolutely opposed to one another. So any law or right that is given to you by government is actually against your God-given rights, necessarily. Let me give you the perfect example of this. I'm going to pull it up real quick. It's my favorite. It's my favorite U.S. code to tell people what a right is. Let's see if I can find it here. It's actually Title 42, Section 1981, for those who want to actually look it up and read it themselves. Here's what it says. Okay, this is equal rights under the law. Equal rights, again, makes everybody equal, and in other words, takes away their voice, takes away their power. Okay, so no more individual thought, no more individual voice. Here's what it says. Statement of equal rights. All persons within the jurisdiction of the United States shall have the same right in every state and territory to make and enforce contracts, to sue, be parties, give evidence, and to the full and equal benefit of all laws and proceedings for the security of persons and property as is enjoyed by white citizens. Okay, now, a common misnomer here is that the civil rights movement made equality. What it really did was pull down the white people down to the level of the black people. That's the hard part for white people to understand. The 14th Amendment citizen, when we say equal rights, what that did was lower the rights of the privileged white class. Okay, but it continues. So far it sounds good, but it continues. So I want people to understand above all else that these are your rights. These are the statement of equal rights. Okay, this is your right. You shall be subject to like punishment, pains, penalties, taxes, licenses, and exactions. And the word exaction actually means extortion of every kind and to no other. Okay? So your statement of equal rights says all persons within the jurisdiction of the United States shall have the right and be subject to like punishment, pains, penalties, taxes, licenses, and exactions or extortions. So now, what does that mean? Well, that's the difference between a positive or man-made right. Positive basically means that something can be forced upon you, whereas negative, it's hard to prove a negative. A negative means you have the right to not have something forced on you. So that's the natural law. The duty in natural law is for me to not force something upon you. Okay, when you go over to the man's law or government law, it's your right to have all these things done to you. It's your right to be taxed, put to death, have your property stolen from you. Fifth Amendment actually says your property can be taken from you. They call it the takings clause. It says your life, your liberty, and your property can be taken away. See, these are the positive laws. It destroys the natural or the God-given rights. Doesn't matter if you believe in God, by the way. When we use these words, it's the nature of law. It's a way of expressing something. It's a way of expressing that there is a higher power than man. That's all it is. Because if you don't express that to man, who says that it's acting under or over God, then you can't get out from under man. Is basically how there has to be a higher power. Is based in law. So again, if I were to tell you, and I were to present you a document that says, okay, we're in a contract now, and these are your rights. You're going to be punished, put in pain. You're going to have penalties, taxes, and licenses to do anything. If you want to do anything, you're going to have to get a license or permission from me. A license is permission to commit an illegal act, by the way. And then I'm going to force you to be exacted or extorted. Well, exaction actually means you're going to be forced to give me money that is not due to me. Think a police officer giving you a ticket for doing absolutely nothing or harming no one. So basically, it takes things from where there's a victim and puts you in the victimless crime arena, basically. So I'm walking my dog without a leash. I've just broken a code. And that's my right to be extorted from because I broke that code. So that U.S. Code Title 42, Section 1981 is called the Public Health and Welfare Code. That alone, I present to people and I say, how is this freedom? How is this what you perceive as the United States to be? How is this a free country if your rights, because people don't know what that word actually means, it's your duty, because you have the right to sue, to be party, to give evidence and all that, it's your duty to be subject to punishment, pains, penalties, and taxes. Whereas under God's law or natural law, you have no such duty. Your only duty is to do no harm to others or their property. That's it. Okay? That's it. That's the only duty you could possibly ever need to survive and be a thriving economy. Do no harm to others or their property. That's it. It's very simple. So.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Clint. This has been
really
interesting, and I
we have to have you back on again. You're so full of information. Sorry, go on.
I can certainly talk.
well, we would love you to talk some more.
Yeah.
But we're out of time. So before we go, though, we want to remind everybody where they can find you and they can find your work.
Well, I'm on Republic Broadcasting Network, RBN, republicbroadcasting.org every day. Well, Monday through Friday, 5 to 7 Pacific, 8 to 10 Eastern. My websites are thecorporationnation.com. That's also the name of the show. And then realityblogger.wordpress.com. Blogger has 1 G. And the latest Common Core thing, I'd really like people to watch. It's an eye opener. Representing lots and lots of painful research too.
Yeah, it's very well researched. You have so many links and so many references on that page, so I hope everybody checks that out too. So, everybody, thanks for listening to Truther Talk. You can find us at truthertalk.com. We thank Clint Richardson. It's been really great. We hope you come back on in a future date, and please enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
How many have children in school? Let's take a survey. How many people in here would like to have their children be common? No? How about average? What do you think Common Core actually is? Do you think common, if you have something that's common? Remember when George Bush came along and said, no child left behind? Well, what Common Core does is the exact opposite of that. It allows no child to get ahead.
I was on holiday with Sir Laurence Olivier. We had decided that 9/11 was an intelligence operation. We'd all known about JFK. He had so many mistresses. The CIA shot him. Castro could never have done it. It was clear we had become realists, conspiracy realists. How would we let everyone know was the question. We decided to buy T-shirts that told the contents of our hearts and minds to the world. We went to shop.truthertees.com. Even though the internet hadn't been invented at the time, we went to shop.truthertees.com. There we purchased Conspiracy Realist T-shirts, one of a kind, sold only at shop.truthertees.com. 100% cotton in men's and women's fitted sizes. I won't tell you which one I'm wearing.
Hey, welcome back to Truther Talk. Thanks for listening. Once again, I'm April Bowden.
And I'm Virstyne Henry.
And you can check out our website at truthertalk.com. This is our first show on UCY TV, but we've been doing this show for about a year and a half or so, I think, a little over a year. So we just wrapped up with our last guest, Clint Richardson, and during the break, I played a little clip of his latest movie, which you can find on thecorporationnation.com, and that film is about the Common Core of Education, which you should really check it out because Clint has an extensive list of references that really point out how this is very directly linked to Agenda 21 and, corporatization, just basically globalization. It's all kind of interconnected. You kind of can't find one. Once you go down these rabbit holes, you see how they're all sort of like this
interconnected.
Everything is interconnected.
Yeah.
And so, right, exactly. You just can't find, they're all connected. You can't find anything that's just happening by itself, just randomly and by accident. So it's definitely interconnected, and he does a really good job of showing you how that works. And so we encourage people to go check out his movie on thecorporationnation.com. And Clint's a really good writer. He's a really interesting guy. He's got a knack for writing. We talked about his essay that he did on leaving Hollywood, which I just found so moving, and it was just really. But his writing is just really good because he's
very introspective, but also is very he's articulate, introspective, and he also has a lot of facts to back up his what he talks about. Because you see a lot of articles where people just basically write what their opinion is.
Yes.
And, they think they're gutsy because they're writing their opinion. And to me, sometimes it gets a little self-serving and egomaniacal, Not his writing, but I'm just saying it's certain articles I've come across where people are just kind of loudmouth and they write a long thing, but they're writing their opinion, and it's just not, it's really, to me, it's not really anything special. But with him, I just like the fact that he talked about, it was very motivating. And he added, he had substance to back what he was talking about, basically.
Yeah, and I think that, what he does as a writer, or at least in this piece and some of the other pieces I've read, because I haven't read all of his stuff, but he's got quite a lot on his website. But he introspects, and he puts himself in the position of, he's not just pointing fingers at everybody and saying, oh, you guys are so bad out there in Hollywood and doing all these horrible things. He's like, this is what I was doing, and it took like an awakening of conscience, because we all have our moments where we awaken, and he had this awakening, and we didn't ask him about it, but he had actually talked to this guy in the military, and that had a lot to do with what spurned this awakening and why he wanted to get out, and he was already kind of seeing other things that were going on in the world and putting these things together. And, I think for all of us, we have some sort of experience, and that was what it was for him.
Did you watch his reel? Did you get a chance?
I didn't, no.
I watched his reel because he's a sound designer. And it was really cool. The stuff that he did was really cool, but after a certain point, like, I had to kind of fast forward through some of it because the sounds were just too gruesome, for me to listen to continuously, because this reel's like 30 minutes long. And it was very disturbing. And I was talking to my kids today that I teach, and they were talking about video games and the same shit. It just drives me crazy. They're just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna kill some people. And I talked to them today. I was like, do you think that that's like desensitizing you? Do you have any concern about that? Like, there are people that are actually going through real war as we speak that are having their their homes bombed and having, becoming dismembered or disfigured or formed or having family members murdered,
Right.
Exactly. And they're like laughing.
Yeah.
Because they don't get it. They're like, oh, come on, but, that's not happening here. I'm like, yeah, but if it would, I don't think you would find it funny,
No.
But
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, go on.
I was going to say what's interesting about that comment is like, oh, it's not happening here. It's, this is something that we bring up a lot is that you never think it's going to be you, and even we're all guilty of that at some point. Like I was saying before how I have a vaccine damaged son and, when I had heard people say that they thought vaccines caused autism, I didn't disbelieve them. I wasn't like these arrogant, pro-vaccine people that just, completely ignore anybody, heartlessly ignore people and their pain and the things that have gone on with them, because some of these people are just, I don't know how they sleep at night, the way they talk to.
They don't have a conscience, that's why.
They don't have a conscience. When you sit there and you go, I'm suffering, my child died, oh, well, that didn't happen from the vaccine.
Well, that's non-scientific based anecdotal evidence. That's not, that
exactly.
doesn't count. No.
Right, that's just cruel. Like, that's just unnecessary and cruel, because for one, they don't know what they're talking about, and two, it's just heartless. It's just mean. But I wasn't like that. I wasn't arrogant about it. I didn't necessarily like vaccines. I didn't necessarily think that they were, the saviors of the world or anything like that. But I just didn't think that this was going to happen to my son, and I figured, well, I guess he kind of needs it, and I don't know, he needs it to go to school, whatever. They're telling me he needs it, so I guess he needs it, and so let's just do it, and he'll be fine, and so. But then he wasn't fine. And then once you start to research it, as we talked about during the intro, and you go down that rabbit hole, you realize that there's really no purpose for them. There's all kinds of toxins for them. So when you take them, it's really a game of Russian roulette, because you're going to get hurt. It's just a matter of how hurt you're going to get. No matter what, when you take a vaccine, it's going to affect you in a negative way. It's just, there's no other way around it.
So, and you might not become autistic, or become brain damaged, but you might get asthma or allergies or some type of autoimmune disease. And now there have been doctors on record that have come out and talk about that's another way that vaccines can, cause damage to people.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's true, and there's so many myriad of problems that can arise from being vaccinated, and you can guarantee that if you take a vaccine, you're going to get one of those problems.
Yeah.
It's just like a given. Sorry, guys, it's just a given. There is no free ride. But
especially now since the schedule has increased, maybe not as much, when they first started vaccinating, but especially now because the schedule is so, it's so rigorous, and it's so there's so many vaccines now compared to when we were even kids,
Right.
And now I think I was vaccine injured because of I had really, really severe allergies and asthma growing up, and it happened around the time where I received, I think I don't exactly remember what vaccine, second round of vaccines, whatever, but anyway, didn't put it together until until I'm an adult, but.
Right. Well, I one time met this woman, and I want to say she was in her 40s, maybe early 50s, and she had a series of chronic illness for her entire adult life. And she went to so many different doctors, and they told her it was psychological, it was in her head. She was at the point where she was suicidal. It was so bad. She had, I would say it was a version of like chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia, where it was just, her body was just attacking itself, and she was so miserable and in so much pain and got sick all the time. And then finally she went to an alternative practitioner, and I want to say it was an acupuncturist, and they said, but I don't remember exactly what type, but they put her on bentonite clay, which is basically just a clay, and you put it in your bath, and it detoxes you, because they had traced back her problem to a vaccine she received when she was 4 years old.
What? Wow.
Yeah. And she was that, and at that point, this woman's in her early 50s. They didn't have a lot of vaccines back then, and so they only had a few. I think I would say it was probably like less than 5. And I know we're looking in they have like 50 now. 50, 60 that are given regularly, and then there's so many more in development. The craziest things that they're trying to create in the vaccine market is just insane. You know, like HIV vaccine, which we know HIV doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
So they're vaccinating against what? We don't know. Like whatever it is, who knows? They haven't been able to successfully create it. Well, no wonder, because HIV is a fraud. So how can you create something to vaccinate against something that doesn't exist? So anyway, so it's just it's really strange. So the whole vaccine issue is big for us. And Clint, we never talked to him that much about that issue, but he also did a movie called Lethal Injection about vaccines. And I actually haven't seen that one, but he references it. He talks a bit about it in his Common Core. He at least puts a link to it, I think, this movie that he did on the Common Core of Education. And as a teacher, I mean, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about what you're made to teach?
I'm getting out. Well, right now it doesn't really affect me because I teach ESL and I teach a writing class. I teach extra studies at an Asian prep school, Chinese prep school. So it doesn't affect me. Now I will probably see it trickle down from the children that are coming in because they do their homework and I hear the assignments that they talk about. I can see that. I haven't really thought about, I have thought about it, but the conclusion so far, I was like, it won't affect me in that way. I'm sure it will affect me. I think, I would just see them become more and more robotic and more, thinking that they're critical thinking, but not thinking, you know what I mean? But not being critical thinkers. Right. I don't know, I think we mentioned this in the first segment about how people, they think research is going to Wikipedia, basically.
Right,
exactly. Or Quackwatch.
Quackwatch or Snoops or something like that.
Snoops or Quackwatch, and they're just this doctor is a quack because it says so in the Quackwatch. And you're like, well, did you actually hear what the doctor said? No, because the Quackwatch showed me. Well, you're not really doing your research. So I see a lot of this attitude with the children. Because I do essays and stuff, and sometimes they have to research a topic before they do essays, and they just go to Wikipedia, and it's so disturbing because Wikipedia is full of shit. And I was having this conversation with my brother, and my brother's super intelligent. He's a really good-hearted guy, but I guess he just couldn't get the fact that because he doesn't think that way. He doesn't think that there are people that will not do what they say they're supposed to do, So he was saying that, we were having this debate about Wikipedia, and we were talking about, how Wikipedia, he was like, well, Wikipedia isn't, it's open and it's free, and you should be able to go and put anything up there and edit and stuff. And I was like, yeah, but there are people that are controlling the information. The people that decide what stays on the page and what goes, or what's omitted from the article. Even if somebody writes an article, there's still somebody there saying what you can and cannot post because they have their own biases. And it's disturbing because children don't get that. So now it's become a lot of this is very, it's becoming very prevalent, I've noticed, especially with a lot of the Facebook fighting that I've been doing that I said I wasn't going to do, but sometimes I end up doing anyway.
Right.
And I hate myself the next day. I'm like, I've lost 2 hours of my life fighting with this idiot. They're not even reading what I'm putting. They're not even reading it,
I know. Yeah.
Like, why do I even try? But anyway, so I've learned a lot the fact that people don't really try to see your side. Well, there's some that do, and I would have to say I was on a vaccine or a pro-vaccine page, and there were people that were pro-vaccine, but they were like, well, hey, just because if those people don't want to vaccinate their kids, let them have their choice. So I appreciate, shout out to the pro-vaxxers who at least, want to give us our human rights, to be able to speak our voice and to be able to not vaccinate if we don't want to, But there are idiotic people that are just like, you're putting us all in danger. And you're like, well, no, you're not, because herd immunity is a myth and it only applies to natural immunity. Right. And, you can tell them a whole thing about the story about the booster shots and stuff. But I don't need to read that because that's non-scientific anecdotal evidence, Right. but it was written by a doctor. Oh, but that's a quack doctor.
Yeah.
No, but it's only a quack because they don't agree or they don't support your belief. So anybody that, you know what I mean, let's by their standards. So there are people that won't look into adults, and I see children that are kind of being brought up the same way through the curriculum that they're being taught, and that disturbs me. But I'm not planning to be teaching within the next year, so I am getting out. So
yeah.
I hope that answered your question. I don't know if I answered. I went on.
No, I just wonder because, as a teacher, I see this Common Core thing as very damaging to teachers. It's almost like worse for the teachers than it is for the kids.
It's very stressful, yeah. I can see.
It's very stressful, and it's basically putting them in a box and making it so they have to teach a certain type of program to the child, and no matter what the level the child is at. So you're not in any way encouraged to individualize a program for a child, have them reach their potential. You're not, nothing. It's just basically, this is what they're going to get. They're common.
They want cyborgs.
Common core.
They want.
Exactly, and that's really kind of what. It's not far-fetched, when Clint talks about it. It's a push towards transhumanism. It very much is, because like you say, that they want cyborgs, but they literally want cyborgs. Yeah. It's like they literally don't care. And we even had we even had a recent parent-teacher conference with my son's teacher, and he's still in school, but we plan to take him out next year and homeschool him. My oldest son, Avery, but we had a meeting with the teacher, and she said that they don't care about penmanship anymore. It's not relevant because all they do is use tablets. And they use tablets and computers. They don't even teach typing. Like we learned, you go ASD, FJK, semicolon. You learned all that when you were younger, so you would learn where the keys are, where the keyboards are. They don't even teach that. They just let them, find their own way. Because most kids, by the time they get to school, have already learned how to use computers. So but penmanship is, writing is actually increases brain function.
Yeah.
Anyone who does, occupational therapy or knows anything about, this connection between brain and body and how, movement and fine motor, gross motor, it all affects the neurons and the neurotransmitters and everything. So when you take that away, it's not just that, well, I don't care if he can handwrite anymore because it isn't needed.
It's easier to control somebody. They're literally being plugged in. I can feel it. I honestly, this might sound crazy. I can feel it too. A lot of times when I write articles or write whatever I'm writing, I have to handwrite it first before I enter it in the computer. I feel like there's a better flow of connection through the universe or whatever you call it, my ideas, when I'm at physically handwriting. I'm more creative when I handwrite, and then I throw it on the computer because my penmanship is bad. Even though I grew up in the days where they did care about that, I didn't listen. So I have to type a lot of my stuff anyway because my writing sucks. But I am grateful that I learned how to write. But I want to mention something. Going back to the cyborg thing, I taught in Asia. I don't know. Oh, I don't think we mentioned this. We actually started this radio show when I was living in Taiwan. And I was teaching English. So I had a lot of Taiwanese kids for a couple years and adults. And one of the things I found disturbing was, and I know I'm being very general. So I'm sure that there are exceptions. But from my experience, what I experienced as a teacher was really rare to have students kind of think outside the box. And it's like when I would teach certain grades, so it's like kindergarten, they were full of life and asking questions, and by the time they got to junior high, my junior high class, they were just silent. They didn't want to ask questions. They were afraid to ask questions because they're afraid of looking stupid. And if we read a story, I can say for the sake of it, we read Little Red Riding Hood, right? So we read Little Red Riding Hood, and I would say, and this is the junior high students. So how did you feel about the story? They would say, oh, well, there was a wolf and a little girl with the Red Riding Hood, and she was going to her grandmother's house. And no, how did you feel? How did you feel about the wolf tricking the girl or pretending to be her friend? Or weren't you scared when when he was hiding in the bed? And they would just be so perplexed that they didn't know how to answer. They were just reminded. And then, also too, my class because some of them are American kids, and then some of my kids are from China. So they'll get mad at me because I stopped giving multiple choice tests.
Right.
Because they're like, no, teacher, no ABCD. No ABCD. I'm like, yeah, no ABCD. That means you're going to have to actually reform the sentence and write it your own answer. And it's such a foreign concept to them. Like, they were so angry at me. They're like, oh, you hate us. I'm like, no. But it's so funny, too, that people have this concept of Asians. Everybody has a stereotype. So people have this, black people, white people, we all have our stereotypes, okay? The stereotypes with Asians is that Asians are very smart. But it's their culture. They're trained to follow orders. They don't question things. Right. Therefore, they're good at taking tests. They're good at being obedient. They're good at, following orders. Like the Japanese, as far as I know, I'm sure they've invented some things, but their huge successes have come after making improvements to something that other people have made. They don't really, as a culture. And I'm sure there are exceptions, exceptions, but they don't, they're not really encouraged to be creative in the school, especially in the school setting, and that's very disturbing to me, almost as if they're cyborgs. Now, I also had a parent to come up to me when I was in Taiwan, and she wanted me to personally tutor her daughter. I couldn't because I was coming back to America shortly, but she was saying that, she didn't want her student to become a test-taking machine. And those, those were her exact words, and her English was, was pretty good. It wasn't, perfect, but I just thought that was the perfect way to explain what I was experiencing and seeing.
Wow, that's really interesting. That reminds me of, that guest we had on probably over a year ago, when kind of early on in our show, Erica Goldson. Remember?
Yes,
she gave the graduation speech, and she was the valedictorian of her high school, and she gave the graduation speech where basically she described that. She said, she wasn't a good student because she was thoughtful and critically thinking. She was a good student because she took orders and she knew how to take tests.
You go to YouTube, put out Erica Goldson valedictorian speech. You guys can probably find it on YouTube.
It's exactly what you're describing, and she does a really good job of telling it, and how she puts herself into the position of being the valedictorian, and how really she didn't really have to learn anything. She just had to learn how to take orders. Yeah. And so what that mom said was exactly true, just being a test-taking machine. And that's the reason that I have concerns of sending my son to school next year when he will be going into middle school. He'll be going into 6th grade, and they're going to be adopting the Common Core, because any district that is accepting federal funding is going to be adopting the Common Core. And so it's pretty much like, as Clint mentioned, once they have it in all 55 states, then really there's going to be no reason for
55 states?
Well, he's saying because he's including he includes like the Virgin Islands and the Dominican Republic.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I was like, wait a minute. Sorry.
There's 50 states, there's like 5 undeclared states,
Okay,
so,
gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, sorry, because I think that's what he said. He said,
sorry, I'm a teacher. I had to.
Yeah, I understand, but I had to explain that. But yeah, he said that, and once they do that, it's going to be pretty much. Why would they even have states in charge of what the education programs are? Because they're all doing the same thing, and so it's just going to be the Fed just completely involved. And as we know, the Department of Education, we know this in our movement, and a lot of people listening might know this as well, that it was started by the Rockefellers, and it was essentially, if you read the works of Charlotte Iserby, this is long before this Common Core thing came about, they were deliberately trying to dumb down society by creating this federal agency that would oversee what the states were already doing. So by taking it out of the hands of the state and putting it in the hands of the Fed, they've done nothing but go down. The schools our country is like one of the worst in the world, and we're a first world nation, so it doesn't even make sense, and they say, well, we're not putting enough money into education. Bullshit. We're putting plenty of money into education. Year and year and year, they get a higher budget. It's just where does the money go? Well, we have to cut music. well, why? But the Department of
Oh,
Education...
because, why? Because it makes people creative, and they don't want that. It opens up neural pathways that can help people to become awake and conscious. They don't want that. Of course they're going to cut music and art and all that shit. Of course.
Right. It's because just like what we were saying with the penmanship, all these things that you do that you think aren't important to learning math and science or learning, reading and writing and all this is actually very important to all of those things because music has to do, like you're saying, builds neurotransmitters, so does writing and penmanship, so does exercise. They always want to cut PE or physical education.
Oh, God, we need it more than ever, too, with all the GMOs and the crap in the food, the radioactive hot Cheetos they're eating.
Right, those things are radioactive. They're so scary.
Oh my god, they come in after break time and their hands are like full of this shit. I'm just like, oh, don't touch me. It's so gross.
Oh, I'm embarrassed to say when, years and years and years ago before, I always had some consciousness of health, and I used to think yogurt was really healthy food to give my kids. But this was before Adam was diagnosed with autism, and we completely changed our diet. We're not on any of that crap now. But they used to have these Trix yogurts. They were Trix
like the cereal. Yes. And
these things, and so they had food coloring in them. I thought that they're yogurts. They should be okay. But they had such food coloring. I swear to God, not to be gross anybody out, but my kids' poop would come out like neon green. It was so weird.
Oh, that's awful. That's terrible.
Because these things were so bad. But that's really prompted me to stop buying those because I was like, oh, that's just so unnatural that I just don't even I think that that's wrong. I can't give those to my kids anymore. So it's a good thing that I had
it's crazy
to give those, even though I wasn't totally awake to that. But now it's like I don't let my kids touch anything with artificial colors on it because that stuff is totally toxic to you. These radioactive Cheetos are just loaded with these, colors and dyes and who knows? I don't even know what they're made out of.
Microchips or whatever. Who knows, man? Pig flu.
Right, chicken nuggets are made out of silicone. They have silicone in this, what a woman puts in her boob when she wants to make her boobs.
I ate so many chicken nuggets. Oh my god. I just gotta go, before I became healthy, and now I found out all this shit that I've eaten throughout the years. I just want to go to a mountain top and detox for a week.
Oh, I know. It's so gross.
Because I'm just like, oh my god, it's terrible.
Right, it's amazing that we're all alive when you consider all the things we put into our body over the years, like diet sodas. You think about the whole health food movement in the 80s and early 90s where everything was low fat, sugar free, but it was just basically translated to toxic. It's just toxic then.
This is another word for another poison we're putting in our bodies, It's
and everybody and what happened with this whole big diet craze? Everyone got fatter. Yeah. So, was it successful? Did it work? Did it help people lose weight? No. It's ridiculous. So, go ahead, sorry.
So, no, I just wanted to switch gears a little bit because we were talking about all this stuff. April and I kind of grapple with this question. What is it, if you guys are listening, what do you think makes people become awake? Because or conscious to the world around them and how it works. Because even if, April, you talked about your situation with your son and how that woke you up, and that woke me up, and my situation, my cousin woke me up, there's still people that, have vaccine damaged children, and they're very, they would go to their graves denying that they were even vaccine injured, The people that refuse to wake up and be asleep. So what do you think it is? Do you think it's luck? Do you think it's some sort of divine intervention? Who around you is awake, and why do you, or not awake, and why do you think that is? Because this sparked me because you were talking about all the stuff that we put in our bodies and how it's amazing we're alive, and that's actually one of the things that gives me hope. It keeps me inspiring despite all of this crazy stuff, not just the stuff that we eat, but that's in our environment, going around, we're still alive as a race, and then there are also people that are still healthy and thriving. And why, I wonder why I didn't succumb to this. Why did I wake up? Because not everybody in my family's awake. Not all of my friends are awake or conscious, But what is?
Yeah, well, certainly it's not genetic. I mean, genetic wake up, because it's true. Like, people in your family are
only the gingers wake up.
Only the gingers.
The gingers have to
Yeah, only the gingers. I'm a ginger, so. But no, I don't know. I mean, it's. We still don't really know the answer to that, because we've talked to a lot of people on our show about it. We talked about it with Richard Grove and Bob Tuskin and some of these people that we've interviewed who are awake and who have this sort of like awakening process, and everybody's different. I mean, there are a lot of people who wake up because, like I said, with my son, because he was vaccine damaged. A lot of people wake up because they experience a trauma. And even with Clint Richardson, it was pretty traumatic for him to recognize what was going on in Hollywood and stuff like that, even though, it wasn't like a sickness or anything, but or maybe it was a sickness of mind,
Yeah.
There's
some people that watch a DVD and it, like, wakes them up. I'm like, those are interesting, too, people.
Right, and then, yeah, exactly. That is really interesting. All they got to do, and we had Brendan Hunt on our show, who's done some really incredible research on the Sandy Hook thing. And if you don't know who Brendan is, and when we asked him how he woke up, he said he was given a DVD on the street. And we were like, "That's it."
I know. We're like, well, you weren't attacked by aliens. Like, nobody died. Nobody got vaccinated. Like, what happened? Like, we were like, sitting waiting for some shocking story to unfold. And he was like, "Yeah, I just watched the DVD and I started researching it." You would hope that there were more people like that, but I guess that does work.
I think it was like the Alex Jones Bohemian Grove DVD. Like, he watched that, and then he just was like, "Well, this is weird. How come nobody knows about that?" And that's a good question.
Yeah.
Why doesn't anybody know that these guys go and like prance around naked and worship an owl and stuff? That's a really weird thing to do, and these guys are like ruling our world. So that's weird, but it's true. I mean, you would kind of watch that and think, if I had woken up, I didn't wake up that way because I found that much later after I'd woken up, but I can imagine if that was the first thing I saw, I would be tripping kind of on that too. Like, well, this is weird, but you might not even recognize. You might say, like, these other people that say, "Oh, well, that's quack," or that's, and then some people wouldn't even or some people wouldn't even bother to look at it. You know what I mean? They would just disregard it. So, what was it about him that had the open mind and the curiosity to say, "I'm going to look at this and see if there's any validity to this." And then once he saw it, and if you know Brennan's work, Brennan's very like.
He's very thorough. Yeah.
He's very thorough and he's very researched. He's not a conspiracy theorist. He won't like come out and call something conspiracy, and he has to verify it heavily.
He actually went to Sandy Hook, by the way.
Yeah.
He researched it, and because he lives in New York, he's not so far, so he actually drove to Sandy Hook. And we were all, like, scared and shit. They're like, "Oh, my God, what if they suicide him?" And, whatever. Yeah. And we were just like, "Oh, shit, but he's fine," but,
He's fine. We had him on our show twice. And once before, he went to Sandy Hook, and once after. We were like, "Come back afterwards," because we need to make sure. But, because it was just scary. But he's fine. But he does very extensive research. So he's not somebody, he would have had to see a movie like that and then actually, like, research it, back it up, and make sure that it was real and valid. And it is. It really does go on. And it's just kind of bizarre. So, but why? Because that takes a certain type of curiosity, takes an open mind. It takes I would say, a certain level of, like, self-confidence, because you have to be willing to say,
"I was wrong.
I was wrong.
Yeah.
I stooped. I didn't know about this." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, somebody starts talking about something that you don't know about. It's almost you have to. It takes like a sense of courage to sit there and go, "Oh, but I don't know what you're talking about." You know what I mean?
Could you explain further? Yeah. You're right. That's a good thing. Maybe it is I think it is partly self-confidence. I think you're right. Because the thing that we do with people to an arguing and stuff, that they don't even feel like they have the need to even look into what we're talking about, yet they want to come and criticize us. But it's like, it seems like if they, were, because if maybe they don't want to, because they feel like if they were wrong, it would be a huge blow to their ego and they can't take it,
Exactly. And so I think, on that note, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the show, but we want to say once again how excited we are to be a part of this family on UCY TV.
Woo-hoo.
And thank you again, Clint Richardson, for being our first guest on our new network today. We think Clint's great, and we're going to have him back real soon because we couldn't get into all of the things we wanted to talk to him about. So, look forward to that. If you enjoyed Clint today, we will be putting him on in the next couple of weeks. He'll be coming back, so that'll be fun. Thank you guys so much, and we're really excited. We hope that you enjoy the show. We hope that you continue to listen and chat and make comments. We'll do our best to respond.
Facebook, follow us on Twitter.
Please check us out. You can find us at truthertalk.com. As always, we like to end the show with peace, truth, and love.
Peace, truth, love you guys. Bye-bye.